Hello, BookTube. I have an old friend who runs a church here in Boston, and for a long time he ran the church charity shop as well, and the charity drives that they did in various times of year, where he would just have our English friends refer to as a jumble sale, where he would just have everything was out there, the prices were dirt cheap, uh, as a way to raise a little money for the parish. And naturally, one of the most popular items in those sales always were books. And I used to go all the time and conspicuously overpay. And then COVID struck, and suddenly those sales were no more. But the books kept coming. And you might remember this story from last week, because my old friend called me up and said, I have something for you, something that a parishioner gave me that she wants me to hand over to you. And I told him I'm not really feeling all that ambulatory, and he said, I'll come and pick you up, and I'll send a car back with a driver, so that you'll barely need to lift a pinky. So I did. One of his parishioners wanted to give me money. She didn't know how to get it to me directly, so she handed it to him to hand to me. But while I was there, he said, the books keep coming. You feel free to look at them. And that was a lot of fun. And the kid who does the driving is becoming a friend. So that's always nice. And I got a call from the same old friend last night saying, I want you to show up. I want you to come over tomorrow because I've got an old friend I want you to meet. And I don't know what that could mean. I didn't know what that could mean. But again, I once again said, the spirit, the energy that I use when I'm talking to you in these videos, notwithstanding, keep in mind what YouTubers always say. They're trying to boost their own profile and make themselves feel like they're more important than they are when they say it. But nevertheless, there is some truth to it, that this is just a little window on a day. Even when I'm making 3 hours worth of videos, it's still just a little window on a day. I don't have this kind of energy most of the time these days. So once again, I told my friend, you're going to have to match your offer of last week, because I'm not going to schlep all the way over there otherwise. And he said, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm in your area. I'll have the car, and I will have the boy bring you back when we're done. So you won't need to worry about it. So I went. The whole way there, I was saying, in the car, I was saying, well, who is this old friend? You're my old friend. What on earth could that mean? And he said, you'll find out. You'll find out. They should be there by now. He used plural. They should be there. And when we got to the church, there was a little old lady. Most of his parishioners are little old ladies. And I have a deep fondness for little old ladies. They are the pinnacle of God's creation. I used to have one of my own. They are wonderful. And she was there. She's not by any stretch of the imagination an old friend of mine. I've known her on and off through the church for a long time. But she wasn't alone. She had her dog with her. I'd asked for updates on him over the years. Every time I saw her, I'd ask for updates. So, how's Charlie? How's it doing? But I hadn't seen him since I helped her acquire him and helped her to train him. And he is old now. He's very, very old. Old and querulous, stiff in his movements, blind, white face, white fur everywhere. An old, old man. An old friend. Absolutely an old friend. I knelt down on the ground. I got down on his level. I introduced myself to him again. I gave him time. His senses were still there, but they're slower. He needed time, and also his brain is slower. He needed time to realize who it was who was next to him. And once he did realize that, he went, "Rawr, rawr," and we immediately just embraced. Just an incredible, it was an incredible, incredible gift. I'm so glad that my friend put up with me long enough to put up with my objections and overrode them so that I could get that moment. That was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. It made my year to see him again. But you can see this coming a mile away, can't you? My old friend also said, well, in addition to him, the books have just kept coming. There are piles of them in the back. There are piles and boxes of them. Are you sure you don't want to take a look? Now, BookTube. I know that I go on and on about how much I love ebooks. And I know that my year is just about over. But honestly, put yourself in my place. a room piled high with books that you're not going to be charged any money for. You can have as many boxes as you want for them, and you have a ride right back to your door and a brawny set of shoulders to bring them up your front stairs. In a situation like that, how many of you would say no? So don't judge me because I didn't say no. Instead, I got a mountain. It's a mountain of them. This is certainly the last book haul that I will do this year. There'll be mail, but this will be the last time that I get a bunch of books in 2021. So I thought we'd go through them. So let's see what we have here. I'll show you all of them. We'll start with the mass market paperbacks. And the first 2 mass market paperbacks are going up on this shelf. You can see this shelf here is all these old Bantam classics. There are some other classics mixed in there, but it's those old Bantams with the white spine, the lettering across the top, and that stylized logo. That particular colophon up over the Bantam. I like that design. I like the way they look. I tend to like the production, the editorial production that Bantam was doing at the time. So when I see those classics, I get them, whether it's in a Little Free Library or at the Brattle or wherever. And I found 2 of them today. I found The Sea Wolf by Jack London. Jack London is most famous for his boys' adventure dog stories, like Call of the Wild or White Fang. And they are justly famous. They are incredibly hypnotic. But he was first and foremost a seaman. And The Sea Wolf is brutal, just a brutal book about the main character finds himself on board a vessel, and it's not his own choice. He doesn't have any ability to leave, and the place is full of monsters, including most especially the captain, Wolf Larsen, who's one of the most memorable characters that Conrad, who wasn't, for all his fame, a very good writer, ever produced. So I got that, and I also got this. I got Anna Karenina. With Malcolm Colley's introduction that has, it's got a lot of, this is an odd thing too, because I'm pretty sure that this original cover, the cover of this Bantam Anna Karenina, is vibrant in reds and maroons and browns and flesh tones. I think the cover here is badly, badly sun damaged. The spine is not at all, but I think the cover is. I'm imagining this was just sitting in a window somewhere. Somehow, I don't know. I don't know the provenance of any of these books. But in Malcolm Colley's introduction, I love his introduction to Anna Karenina, because at one point he gives the very po-faced line, "One suspects that the author is mistaking himself for the God of Moses." Yes, one does suspect that about Tolstoy. And this is, of course, David Murphy's favorite book. It's a great, great novel. I don't know if it is on the roster for Scott, of Scott and Becky and Link at the Bookish Bryants. Scott is planning on reading a shelf full of tomes for 2022. And I can't remember if Anna Karenina is on that list. I know that War and Peace is. But Anna Karenina was sort of his, he wrote other things, weird things that nobody cares about, that he cared about. But Anna Karenina was sort of his fiction follow-up. And Tolstoy was such a bastard. He's just such an awful, crabby, horrible, lunatic person that when he finished War and Peace, and the whole of the world, but especially the whole of literary Russia, in St. Petersburg especially, said this is one of the greatest novels ever written. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. The minute Tolstoy, he was so much like, the minute Tolstoy heard that praise, he started poo-pooing the novel. If he hadn't heard the praise, he would have said it was the greatest thing ever done by man in any field, even penicillin. But since he did get the praise, he immediately became contrary and just said, no, it was a good idea for us to launch the war in Iraq. And then years passed, and they did the same thing with Anna Karenina. Same thing. When this novel finally appeared, it had people, the critics just were blown away. More than one critic in Russia made comparisons with no less than Homer. As I have said many times on this channel, there's something particularly unfair about an author who writes 2 toweringly great works in one lifetime. Anna Karenina had Dostoevsky it wasn't hard to get Dostoevsky to rave. Most of his sheep have wandered from the pasture, if you know what I mean. But he was just waving his arms around with joy and ecstasy, saying that no one had ever been, there had never been as great an artist as Tolstoy. because first he wrote War and Peace, and then he wrote Anna Karenina. But immediately Tolstoy started calling it garbage. But this is who does this translation? This is the translation is by Joel Carmichael. I'm not sure that I've ever read Joel Carmichael's Anna Karenina. So if Scott does do Anna Karenina as his 2022 tomes year, I'll be ready. I will reinforce it, put it up on that shelf. In fact, I will move. You've got the little collector's library Jane Austen there. Down at the end, you've got Jaws 2 and a couple of other things there. I'll move slowly but surely. I will just fill that shelf with these Bantam classics. So I'll get rid of the things that aren't. Then the next one, another mass market paperback. This is these old Berkeley paperbacks of Sherlock Holmes. They did a whole bunch of them. This is The Valley of Fear. I get these whenever I see them just because they're really neat. I fell in love with the cover artwork when they first came out. When was that? This was 1980s. I fell in love with the cover art there. This next one is just a wild gamble. I admit I was intrigued by the cover. This is by Michael Z. Williamson, and it's A Long Time Until Now. And there you have a Jeep being rammed sideways by a woolly rhinoceros. And on the Jeep are, you've got, it looks to me, you've got a Roman centurion there. As is usually the case, the artist has just gone from manuals or whatnot. So for some reason, the Roman centurion is wearing his Sunday best. It's the equivalent of a full dress Marine uniform showing up in the trenches in a World War II in a World War II Marine movie. You'd immediately know it was wrong. It's just we don't have any Romans around to tell us but that is wrong. But anyway, I immediately wondered, what's going on here, and then I read the description, which I will read to you. 10 U.S. soldiers on convoy in Afghanistan suddenly find themselves lost in time. Somehow they arrived in Earth's Paleolithic in Asia, with no idea how they arrived or how to get back, or even if it's possible to get back. Then they discover groups of similarly displaced Imperial Romans, Neolithic Europeans, and a small cadre of East Indian peasants. Then, just as the Americans start accepting their new reality, new arrivals change it all again, and the back has more ancient creatures. Ancient elephants that looks like a therapsid of some kind. And I'm always up for this sort of thing. I love Harry Turtledow's Displaced Legion novels, for instance, that have a Roman legion displaced in time. David Drake also did a series of stories like that. The problem that I tend to have with books like this is that they tend to be, they seem, this is a hefty thing too. I don't know if you saw that. It's a hefty sized thing. Never heard of it before. The problem that I tend to have with these sorts of things is that they are interesting in the time travel bit and in the adventures and whatnot, but they tend to be recruitment posters for the military. It's almost always a military unit that gets displaced in time. I think probably because the authors are relying on the convenience of that as a plot device, that a military unit will have cohesion regardless of where you put it. But it ends up being, where the Marines are all just Marine stereotypes. They're all subhuman. They all say hoorah. They all do that sort of thing. I don't want to read, what is this, 600 pages? Oh God, it's almost 1,000 pages. I don't want to read almost 1,000 pages of a recruitment ad for the Marines. Or about how effortlessly cool they all are. And also another thing that's very alarming in this kind of displaced military fiction is that usually, in addition to being just a recruitment poster for the military, whatever military unit is involved, they'll also fit in with military psychology, where the officers will be more intelligent than the men beneath them. Where it'll fit in not only with the recruitment poster, but with the mythology that merit rises to the top. That is certainly not the case. And we'll see. I don't know anything about the book, so it may or may not work. Then this next one is a Norton Critical Edition. I've shown you those on this channel many, many times. Happy to find one. This is the Norton Critical Editions will have the book in the front and then critical essays and reception in the back. And this is Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. Fan fiction of the absolute first water of Jane Eyre, which looks to create a sympathetic, multifaceted backstory for the mad woman in the attic. in Jane Eyre, and maybe a little bit of rationale or resonance for what happens in Jane Eyre. And certainly a bit of a backstory for Rochester, of a very different type than a lot of the much lesser fan fiction that is written about Rochester's early days. I haven't read this in a long time, and I'm happy to find it in a Norton Critical, because you really get your bang for the buck with a Norton Critical. You not just get the work with footnotes, but you get all those essays in the back, which is great. John Reese has a new biography coming out in English next year. I'm sure that if I'm around next year, and if I'm reviewing books, and if I care about such things, and if biography is still my favorite genre and whatnot, all of those ifs, all the end of the year ifs, if all of that is true, I'm sure that I'm going to want to reread White Sargasso Sea. It would be a terrible thing to want that and not have it. Then this next one is a BookTube Made Me Do It purchase of a kind. It's not a purchase. It was free. It was just me throwing things into a box. But I realized as soon as I saw it that I don't have any of the copies that I got. I asked for an advance copy of this from the publisher, and I got it. Then I got a finished copy from the publisher, and then I got the paperback reprint from the publisher, and then I got the 10-year anniversary paperback reprint from the publisher. I got all of that from the publisher. I sent them all away to people, because it is a very interesting book. It is worthy to send to people. It's How Fiction Works by James Wood, here in hardcover, which I haven't had in forever and ever. And this is a BookTube Made Me Do It thing, because this featured prominently in a video by Sam the Teacher, a new BookTube channel by a young man who, as the title of his channel endlessly reminds you, was a teacher. He taught undergraduate literature and writing at Johns Hopkins. Mainly, as he puts it in his videos, to students who were not going on to any kind of, they were pre-med, they were pre-business, they were that sort of thing. It was a requirement course. They weren't going on to any kind of literary interest. And it was his sort of informal job, bless him, to try to instill enthusiasm in those readers for the written word, for writing. I'll leave, if I remember correctly, I'll leave a link to his channel down below. It's worth your time to go and subscribe. Don't know, there's one thing that may put you off about his channel, which is, some of you are going to see it coming because he has a background in academia, which is that he tends to drone in his speech. He talks to you in his videos in a way that I unconditionally guarantee you he does not talk to his friends. And it's just a bad habit. That's all. He's young. He can shake it off. The bad habit of American academia, anyway, I can't speak for any other country, but the bad habit of American academia is that the academic, the person at the front of the classroom, realizes right away and never forgets that they have a captive audience. They might lie to interviewers and say, oh, I learn as much from my students as they learn from me, but there is no ghost of parity. The students have to listen to you. You don't have to listen to them. The knowledge, as far as the academic is concerned, flows downhill. I taught for a long time. I never insulted my students by even slightly thinking that way, not even slightly. And as you may know from watching this channel, they never had to worry about a boring vocal presentation. I am, on both sides of my family, going all the way back to the Battle of the Boyne, 100% Irish. And we're pretty good with talking. So that was never a problem for my students, ever. But the particular cadence that Sam has in his videos is, I believe, a pernicious holdover from his time in academia. The cadence that he has in his videos is very much, the subtext of it is very much, you don't have any choice but to listen to me. In the real world, outside of the classroom, people absolutely do have a choice whether or not to listen to you. The point I want to make is, if you can overlook how he says it, what he says is very interesting. We've netted another genuine reader, and also genuine writer, and with an interesting backstory, right? BookTube is slowly but surely accumulating all these fascinating backstories, people who come from all walks of life. I'm pretty sure that Sam is one of the first people to join BookTube, however long he stays. I hope he stays a long time. I'm pretty sure he's one of the first people to join BookTube who has a credit like Hopkins on his CV. That Johns Hopkins is not a small thing. And he held this book up at one point, made me feel a little bit old, not that that's hard to do, especially at this time of year, by saying that he was assigned this in school and that he then in turn assigned it to his students. I can see that. because it's very, very good thinking about the workings of fiction, the workings of writing. So when I saw it, for nothing, with a pair of strapping shoulders to bring it back here, I grabbed it. Same thing with this next one. I had a hardcover of this. I don't think I do anymore. This is Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith, and it's about all kinds of consciousness, including self-consciousness, all kinds of intelligence, all kinds of creativity, all kinds of non-human sentience on this planet. In the course of one lifetime, scientists who aren't just a-holes have gone from saying that exists in only one species to saying it exists fairly commonly in the animal kingdom. And this is the paperback version of that. I don't know if I'm blurbed on this. China Mieville, Cy Montgomery, Philip Hoare. I don't know that I am. Let's take a little stroll, shall we, and see if I am. Charles Foster in the literary review. I would love to write for a literary review. I don't know how you swing that. No, I'm not blurbed on this one, but I'm happy to have it again. Happy to give it another try. It doesn't go far enough. Such books don't go far enough, but that's only because we have millennia of bad habits to break up and shed when it comes to thinking about how other animals think. Because for millennia, humans could not think that they were animals. Once you start to think that, once you shed that completely and you realize, okay, the aphid on the leaf, the squirrel in the field, the deer at the edge of my garden, my dog, and me, we are all animals. We're all dealing with the world in some way with cognition. Somehow we are. Once you start to realize that, then all of a sudden lots and lots of the presupposed categories that used to govern ethology are removed completely, and you got to come up with different things to do. That used to drive me crazy. When I was in college, it used to drive me crazy when people say, well, how do we know that dolphins are intelligent? Well, because we came up with all of these intelligence tests. You take one look at the intelligence test. As someone who wasn't raised by humans, I took one look at the intelligence test and thought, this is a test designed to prove whether or not you're human. What kind of a measuring rod is that for an animal that's not human, hasn't shared human ancestry in 1 billion years? I'm glad that is going away. Books like Other Minds are a step in the right direction. Then we have Indian Summer by William Dean Howells. It's him again. We have William Dean Howells back again. There he is as a grand old man. We saw him as a dandy in my last Brattle book haul. This is his book about a man who loses his job, goes to Florence, has a midlife crisis before that was called that. Tremendously engaging thing. It's got an introduction by John Updike, who very much, Updike's good when he's writing nonfiction, occasional nonfiction prose about other writers. He's very good. But you can tell in his introduction, if I remember correctly, you can tell that he clearly thinks that it is William Dean Howells writing about William Dean Howells. And it's not, because people still remember William Dean Howells, and no one's going to remember Updike in another 20 years. But this is in a Library of America trade paperback. And I'm tacitly encouraged, emailing with Mark Richardson and thinking about it on my own, I'm tacitly encouraged that there's nothing wrong with me liking particular editions and setups of books. We all have our own preferences in that regard, and it's about time that I just made my peace with that instead of trying to deny it. Obviously, I have preferences when it comes to formats and publications. Same thing with these next two. I encountered these decades ago, in the 1980s. They're Robert Graves, but they're not I, Claudius. This is Count Belisarius in this old Farrar, and Giroux trade paperback, which is not particularly solid, but I've never seen an edition of Count Belisarius that was. The hardcovers are ugly and rare. That's probably a folio society. This thing would cost me an arm and a leg. But the normal hardcover that I would encounter at the Brattle bookshop, I wouldn't want. And the mass market paperbacks are all junk. They fall apart just to look at them. This thing will also fall apart. I had this. I bought it in bookstores in the 1980s. And it's not well made. But this is Robert Graves doing the I, Claudius thing for the General Belisarius, the Roman General Belisarius, who was the foremost arm of the Roman Emperor Justinian in an attempt to reconquer the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire had frittered away, and barbarians had overtaken large parts of what used to be the Roman Empire, and Justinian wanted to fix that. And he had at his disposal not much money, not much in the way of equipment, but one of the greatest generals in the history of the world. Certainly one of the greatest generals in the history of Rome. And this is Robert Graves writing a kind of fictionalized biography of Belisarius that leans way too much. For Belisarius, we have two really indispensable sources. And the maddening thing is that they're the same person. both the sources are the same person. Procopius was a historian who knew Belisarius. He knew Belisarius' wife. He knew Justinian. He knew Justinian's wife. He went on campaign with Belisarius and wrote serious stand-up histories, Tacitian histories of Belisarius' campaigns and whatnot, and also a lot of the official building programs of Justinian. But the whole time that he was writing that from the annals for publication so that people could correct him and fact check him, he was also writing a scandalous secret history of the same people, retailing all kinds of backstairs gossip and rumor and whatnot. The secret history is tremendously fun to read, but it clashes with the official histories that virtually nobody has read. Loeb does them, so you can read them if you want to, but virtually nobody has read the rest of Procopius. And unfortunately, they don't coincide, and Robert Graves tries to make his peace with both of them in the course of this book, to sometimes disastrous effect. Then the other Robert Graves I got was King Jesus, which is where he does the I, Claudius, Count Belisarius treatment only for Jesus, which is significantly harder to do. This is a historical novel about Jesus of Nazareth, and one of the best ones. But it's weird and didactic, as so much of Graves is, and it also has a much bigger problem, which is that there's a very, very strong case to be made that Jesus did not exist at all, that there was no historical character by that name. There's a very, very strong case to be made, stronger than a lot of institutional academics would have you believe. A case that is in no way similar with, for instance, the Emperor Claudius or General Belisarius. No comparison whatsoever. So this has a lot more ground to cover, and a lot more. And this is also one of those FSG paperbacks that I will reinforce both of these, and I will just hope for the best, but I don't know that they'll outlast one reading. Then I found a cute little hardcover of The Night Before Christmas with Arthur Rackham illustrations. Always nice to get an Arthur Rackham. It's just a tiny little thing. I grabbed it. I don't need a standalone of Night Before Christmas, but if I were going to have one, probably this is one that I would want, Arthur Rackham, just for the illustrations. Then I got a hardcover copy of a great 20th century novel. If we were to do a list of the 100 great 20th century novels, this would be on that list. This is The Three Arch Bridge by Ishmael Kadar. This is a great story. It's technically a historical novel. It's really a very smart allegory for the condition of the Balkans at the time when the author was writing the book. But it's a historical novel about the building of a great bridge and the time-honored, not at all apocryphal practice of immuring someone alive in the foundation of the bridge or a building of some kind in order to hallow it. There's a bit of that goes on in here as well. Tons of great characters, but that process is not fake. That process really happened and got pretty horrible. Christians used to immure Jewish babies alive in the foundations of their churches. If you were to jackhammer your way down into Notre Dame or even some of the big cathedrals in England, you would find skeletons in the stonework. And this, I cannot praise Three Arch Bridge high enough. When did this come out? In the 1980s? 1970s? 1993. English language translation, 1997. If I were to make a list of, for instance, we were to split the 20th century 50 books and 50 books from before 1950, after 1950, this would be on the list for after 1950. Then the next two are a couple of gambles. These were all free. They were being literally brought to my door, so I took gambles. The first one is The Case of the Counterfeit Codicil by P.J. Fitzsimmons. Never heard of this before, but it's a murder mystery, and I liked it. Antsy Boysjolly, Roaring Twenties Woodhouseian gadabout and clubman, takes on his first case when his old Oxford chum and coxswain is facing the gallows, accused of the murder of his wealthy uncle. And the back cover says that it features not one but two locked room mysteries. As a complete gamble, I will certainly take it. Same thing with this next one. Never heard of it before. It's by M. Black, and it's called An Italian Elegy. And it's for the gays. Gotta have something for the gays. Clayton came to Trento for only the winter to finish the book he's writing. But when he returns to San Francisco, he leaves his heart in Trento in the loving care of Luca. And while Luca loves Clayton deeply, there seems to be no way for him to follow his love to America. The love between these two men is passionate and enduring. Continents apart, each immersed in a culture alien to the other, no matter where they go, one is always the foreigner in a strange land. And the book says that this is M. Black's first novel. Happily give it a try. Absolutely. No skin off my nose. This next one is Natural History, Like Other Minds. This is Coyote America by Dan Flores in trade paperback. I've only ever had this in an advanced copy and the finished copy, the hardcover. I've never had the paperback before, I don't think. And this is a natural history of the coyote. We just saw an exact equivalent of this for the bald eagle. It came in the mail today in another one of today's gargantuan email or video updates. And I don't know if I am blurbed on this thing or not. Okay, Christian Science Monitor blurb on the back is compassionate and captivating. Huh. So was that me? Sometimes they'll give you a longer excerpt from the review on the inside. Boy, this got reviewed by everybody. It got loved by everybody. Even the Deseret News. Albuquerque Journal. I've never written for the Albuquerque Journal. Oh, Open Letters Monthly. Oh, okay. All right. Well, it can't be both, right? It can't be both. When did this come out? This is the paperback. 2016. The Open Letters Monthly. Those of you who don't have any idea what I'm talking about, Open Letters Monthly was an online literary journal where I was the managing editor and wrote 90% of the reviews. Its progenitor is Open Letters Review, which exists now. The Open Letters Monthly blurb is, Flores stares long and deeply into the coyote's eyes, returning to us with cultural treasures both sparkling and lyrical. Okay, well, there's a Christian Science Monitor blurb and an Open Letters Monthly blurb. They can't both be me, so I'll have to check that out. I'll have to look online and see if I can find which venue I reviewed that for. And if I can't help but think that I reviewed it for the Christian Science Monitor. And if I did, then who reviewed it for Open Letters Monthly? Well, anyway, these next two are trade paperbacks from the UK trade paperbacks, or as you call them in the UK, trade paperbacks. I have a very soft spot for UK trade paperbacks. And this first one is one that I don't have. The minute I saw it, I realized, you got rid of your last copy. I'll take it as a UK trade paperback and I'll reread it. It's The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. His million-selling, best-selling, breakout, new atheist hit of a book about where he takes his background as an evolutionary biologist and links it to why humans seem hardwired to believe in gods. Maybe there's an evolutionary advantage. Maybe it's an evolutionary process. Of course, in the course of the book, he is bare-knuckle brutal to the idea that religions might be real, that gods might be real. His starting point is that they are not, and what explains this. But I haven't read the book since its heyday. I might have reviewed it for Open Letters Monthly. Then this next one is an Anne Perry novel. I don't have any Anne Perry novels except his ebooks. But this one I remember liking quite a bit when it came out in, this is a UK trade paperback. I think this came out in the 80s? No, 1997. This is Ashworth Hall. In the classic trade paperback edition there, where you've got the authors on the back, the front, no folderol whatsoever. And this is Monk, her police detective. And he is at the eponymous Ashworth Hall because that is where highly secret negotiations are being conducted about Irish Home Rule. And during the course of those negotiations, one of the high-profile British negotiators is found dead. And that makes things so much worse. It makes an already tense situation much tenser. I seem to remember liking this a lot, not only for adroit political writing, but also for the stately hall manner in the book, which I thought was portrayed really well. But I haven't reread an Anne Perry in forever, just in forever. And though her novels are still going on, Monk's son is now the hero of the novels. The series is just going on and on. Then this next one is Straight Up History. Don't think I've ever read this. It's by Sutton Publishing. I don't think it would ever have come to me. It's by William Ury, and it's called Thomas Becket, His Last Days. Thin thing, heavily illustrated all throughout. Yeah, you've got all sorts of an altar with daggers over it, fittingly enough. And I don't know anything about this book, so I don't know what we're talking about when we talk about Thomas Becket's last days. Are we talking about his last year, his last 2 years, or his last month? No idea. We'll see. It won't take. It's not a big thing at all. It's tiny, so it won't take any time at all to read. And it was free, and it was door-to-door service, so I took it. And then there's this last one, which is also oversized, and is going to go in this room. I imagine that a few of these things will end up in this room, but maybe not as many as you would think. Those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, this is my little book room. This is not the rest of Hyde Cottage. This is my little book room. It has my little pre-World War I bed. It has a green-shaded banker's lamp on the nightstand. It has one window. It's a tiny space, and it is walled. It is lined all the way around with books. I always advise people to do what I do when it comes to this. Whenever I go anywhere new to live, I always try to make a room like this. Set aside a little space and fill it with books and fill it with pillows and fill it with comfort so that you have a space to go and mentally regroup. One of the greatest favors, tributes, gifts anybody's given me in the 21st century has been Mark Richardson and the Richardson family up in Vermont, who, when they moved to a gigantic old house, only Mark, I swear, could move from a very, very old house in Vermont to an even older house in Vermont. When they moved to that house, they set aside a little room. They set aside a Steve room for me and Frida. That was a tremendous, tremendous thing. It makes a huge amount of difference, too, when you're not booting somebody out of their own room. But I always try and make a space like this, and the books that are in here mean something different than the books that are anywhere else. Doesn't mean I don't love the books that are anywhere else, but the books that are in here, it means something different for a book to make its way into this room. And I don't know, the goal, of course, with any kind of book forge is always to get books, only books, that will make it into this room. That's never going to happen. And it certainly wasn't going to happen when somebody's telling me, here are 1,000 books, pick as many as you want and take them for free. Then I'm going to grab whatever. But this next one will probably make it into this room. All of its companions are already in here. This is The Life of Mammals by David Attenborough. One of his standard productions that is just full of color photos and graceful narration about the width and variety of mammal species on Earth. I love these things. I guess that makes me fairly simple, but his life on Earth and all that sort of thing. I just love these things. I go back to them often. The one that I go back to most often is, I think, the most heartfelt one, The Life of Birds. But I haven't had The Life of Mammals in a long time. Glad to have this back. So there you go. Dare we try a Steve pile of 20 books? We have The Life of Mammals by David Attenborough. We have Thomas Becket, His Last Days. Will no one rid me of this troublesome priest? We have Ashworth Hall by Anne Perry. We have The God Delusion by the infamous Richard Dawkins. We have Coyote America by Dan Flores, A Natural History of Coyotes in America, Canis Latrans, which when I read this book and reviewed it, I had not had the pleasure in years of meeting and face smooching a coyote, and that happened just the other day, and only a quarter of a mile from my front door. You don't have to go to the American Midwest or the American West to do it. There's one living in the woods right near where Frida and I live, so that's great. That's bound to shade my reading. Oh, now see, a book fell, but we're still going to do this because I feel the challenge now. So we'll just put these back where they were. There we go. We've got the pile, and then we're doing an Italian elegy for the gays. Then we have the counterfeit codicil, where a Bertie Wooster-esque figure solves crimes in the 1930s, it sounds like. Then The Three Arch Bridge by Ishmael Kadar, a great novel, something you should read. Then The Night Before Christmas by Clement Moore. We have King Jesus by Robert Graves, and also Count Belisarius by Robert Graves in these old FSG paperbacks. We have Indian Summer by William Dean Howells in a Library of America trade paperback. We have Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith about intelligence and sentience, self-awareness, developing all across the animal kingdom. We have How Fiction Works by James Wood in a hardcover. Very glad to have that. We have Wide Sargasso Sea in the Norton Critical Edition. We have A Long Time Until Now. A group of Marines gets lost in the Paleolithic Age. We have The Valley of Fear by Sherlock Holmes, not one of his more successful novels, but I'll take it. We have Anna Karenina in one of these old Bantam mass market paperbacks. And finally, The Sea Wolf by Jack London. So there you go. We did a Steve Pyramid after all. The Sea Wolf by Jack London, a pretty unsavory novel, but definitely a sea tale worth reading. So there you go. There you go. That was about all the effort that these books are going to cost me, was the effort to hold them up for the camera. Other than that, all the lifting was done by other people. And that is the last book haul that I will do in 2021. No more Brattle, no more visits, no more nothing like that. So these things will give me a good amount of enjoyment, and that's great, because they're all going to get enjoyed right away. None of these things are going on a pile to be enjoyed 2 years from now. They're going to be consumed in the next 10 days. But anyway, that's long enough. I will wrap up this video, and I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.